A cold wind blew through the busy city streets as Lila pulled her jacket tighter around herself. She was standing behind the counter at the fancy restaurant where she worked. Her shift was almost over, and the place was full of rich customers laughing and enjoying their time, not knowing how hard it was for people like Lila to make ends meet. Lila was always a kind person, always ready to help others. But tonight, being kind was going to cost her everything. The restaurant door opened, and a man walked in wearing a simple black hoodie, jeans, and a cap pulled down low over his face. He didn't look fancy and he didn't try to get attention. But something about him seemed familiar. Lila's eyes grew wide as she realized who he was. It was Keanu Reeves. He quietly sat down at a corner table, not making a scene. Lila watched as the waitress walked over to him, looked a bit unsure, then whispered something to him before walking away with a worried look on her face. A moment later, the restaurant manager, Mr. Gregory, came storming out of his office, wearing a fake smile. "I'm sorry, sir, but we only accept reservations here," he said, sounding rude. "I'll have to ask you to leave." Keanu just nodded and started to pull out his wallet. "I understand. I'll just get something to go." Before he could finish pulling out his money, Mr. Gregory laughed in a mean way. "I don't think you understand. This isn't the type of place where you can just walk in." Lila couldn't stay quiet anymore. She stepped forward. "He's not causing any trouble," she said firmly. "If he wants to order, let him." Mr. Gregory glared at her. "Lila, stay out of this," he yelled. But Lila didn't listen. She grabbed a menu and gave it to Keanu. "What would you like?" she asked, ignoring the bad energy around her. Keanu smiled at her softly. "Just a simple meal, please." The restaurant fell quiet. Everyone was watching now. Mr. Gregory turned red with anger. "That's it. You're done?" he shouted. "You're fired?" Lila's heart sank. She couldn't believe it. She had just lost her job for doing the right thing. She looked at Keanu, who met her eyes with a serious look. Without saying another word, Lila took off her apron, threw it on the counter, and walked out of the restaurant. She felt like the world was crashing down on her. She had no idea what would happen next. By tomorrow, her life would change in a way she never expected. Lila walked through the empty streets, her mind racing. How could this happen? She had worked at that restaurant for 2 years, and now she had lost her job just for standing up for someone. She reached her tiny apartment. It was small and didn't even feel like a real home. Her rent was due in a week and she had no savings. She had no backup plan. Lying on her bed, she stared at the ceiling, trying not to cry. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend, Sophia. "Sophia, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" Lila typed back, "I lost my job for trying to help someone. I feel like I did the right thing, but it still really sucks." Sophia replied quickly, "Wait, you don't mean Keanu Reeves?" Lila hesitated and typed back, "Lila? Yeah, why?" There was a long pause before Sophia sent a screenshot of a post on social media. Lila's eyes got wide as she saw a picture from the restaurant. The caption said, "Waitress fired for helping Keanu Reeves after a rude manager kicks him out." Disgusting. The comments were full of people standing up for Lila. Who fires someone for being kind? This restaurant is done. Boycott them, one person wrote. Another comment said, "Someone find this waitress. She deserves better." Lila's heart raced. People were standing up for her. Before she could even react, her phone rang. The number was unknown. She was nervous but answered. "Hello," she said. A calm, familiar voice came through the phone. "Lila, this is Keanu." Lila's eyes grew big. She almost dropped the phone. "Keanu Reeves?" she asked, her voice shaky. Keanu chuckled. "Yes, I just wanted to check on you. What happened back there wasn't fair." Lila sat up quickly, nearly falling off her bed. "I appreciate that, but I'll be fine. I just didn't think standing up for someone would cost me my job." Keanu was silent for a moment. Then he said something that made Lila feel like she had goosebumps. "It won't cost you anything, Lila. In fact, it might be the best thing that ever happened to you." Before Lila could answer, another message popped up on her phone. This time it was from a news website. The headline read, "Waitress fired for defending Keanu Reeves. Hollywood star speaks out." Lila's jaw dropped. She couldn't believe it. Keanu had spoken to the media. She quickly scrolled through the article. Keanu had said, "It's not about me. It's about how we treat people. This woman showed kindness and she was punished for it. That's not the world I want to live in." The restaurant's social media was flooded with angry comments. People were calling for Mr. Gregory, the manager, to be fired. Lila couldn't believe it. "This is crazy," she whispered to herself. "What happens now?" Keanu's voice came through the phone again, calm and steady. That depends on you. I have an idea, but I need to ask. Do you trust me? Lila didn't hesitate for a second. Yes, she said. Keanu paused for a moment. Good. Pack your bags. Your life is about to change. Lila felt her heart race. Was this really happening? Her life had just fallen apart, and now one of the biggest movie stars was telling her to pack her bags? She wanted to ask a million questions, but Keanu spoke again before she could. I'll send a car in the morning. Get some rest, Lila, he said. And with that, he hung up. Lila stared at her phone, still trying to process what had just happened. Was this real? She hardly slept that night, her mind full of questions. What was Keanu planning? Was this some kind of joke? The next morning at exactly 9 a.m., a sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment. Her hands shook as she stepped outside. The driver, a man wearing sunglasses, stepped out and opened the door for her. Miss Lila? He asked politely. Lila nodded slowly. Please have a seat, the driver said, and she climbed into the car. The car drove through the city streets, and Lila realized this wasn't just a random meeting. Keanu had a plan. After about 30 minutes, the car stopped in front of a huge, modern building, the kind of place where only rich and important people went. Lila stepped out of the car, feeling out of place and nervous. Before she could say anything, the doors opened and there was Keanu Reeves, waiting for her with a big smile. Ready to change your life? He asked. Lila took a deep breath. I think so. Keanu nodded. Good. Because we have work to do. Lila followed Keanu through the big glass doors, her heart pounding in her chest. The lobby around her was beautiful. High ceilings, shiny marble floors, and walls filled with paintings. This wasn't just any building. This place was special. Her hands were sweaty as she swallowed hard and asked, Keanu, what is this place? Keanu turned to her and gave her a small smile as if he knew what she was thinking. You'll see soon enough, he said, giving her a reassuring nod. They stepped into the elevator and Keanu pressed the button for the top floor. The elevator doors closed and a quiet silence filled the space. Lila didn't speak, too nervous to say anything. What was Keanu's plan for her? What did he want with her? She had no idea. With a soft ding, the elevator arrived at the top floor and the doors slid open. Lila stepped out into a beautiful office space, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing an amazing view of the city below. The room was full of well-dressed people, all of them looking at Lila with curious eyes. Keanu turned to her and gestured toward them. Lila, meet the team, Keanu said. Lila blinked in confusion. Team? What team? She asked, not sure what he meant. Keanu chuckled, as if he was amused by her confusion. Mine, he replied simply. Lila was still lost. I don't understand, she said, trying to make sense of it all. Keanu leaned against a desk, his expression now serious. After what happened last night, I started thinking. You didn't just lose a job, Lila. You lost it for doing the right thing. And that's something that should be rewarded, not punished. Lila's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure where this was going. Keanu, I really appreciate this, but, she started, unsure of what else to say. Keanu raised a hand, stopping her before she could continue. Let me explain, he said, his voice calm but firm. I have projects, charities, businesses. I need people I can trust. People with integrity. People like you. His eyes locked onto hers and Lila felt her breath catch in her throat. Keanu's words hit her hard. She had spent so long feeling invisible, struggling to make ends meet, but now she was standing in front of him, and he was offering her something she never expected. You're offering me a job? Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu smiled warmly. Not just a job. A purpose? Lila was stunned. Just yesterday she was a waitress barely getting by. Today she was standing in this incredible office with Keanu Reeves, who was offering her a chance to change her life. Her mind raced, unsure how to process everything happening around her. Keanu watched her carefully as if waiting for her to process what he had said. Lila finally took a deep breath. What would I be doing? She asked. Keanu grinned. Let's just say you'll be helping people the way you helped me, he said with a wink. Lila felt a swirl of confusion in her stomach. Could this really be happening? She wasn't sure, but before she could ask more questions, Keanu added something that made her heart stop. You stood up for a stranger when you had nothing to gain. Imagine what you could do if you had the power to actually change lives. That was it. Lila's doubts disappeared. She was tired of being invisible, tired of always being the one who had to take the bad things that happened to her. She could help. She could make a difference. She met Keanu's gaze and nodded. I'm in, she said, her voice full of determination. Keanu's smile grew even wider. Then let's get started. The room around them seemed to fill with a buzz of quiet excitement. Keanu led Lila toward a long glass conference table, where everyone was already seated. People turned to look at her with curious eyes. Lila could feel the weight of their stares, and she shifted uncomfortably. Just yesterday she had been a nobody, a waitress struggling to survive. And now she was in a beautiful high-rise office, sitting across from some of the most powerful people she had ever seen. Keanu sat at the head of the table. "All right, let's get started," he said, his voice confident. A woman with short blonde hair and sharp eyes leaned forward, eyeing Lila closely. "Is this her?" she asked Keanu. Keanu nodded. "Yes, Lila. The one who stood up when no one else did." The woman studied Lila carefully for a moment before smiling. "Impressive," she said. Lila shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I still don't really understand what I'm doing here," she said, her voice full of confusion. Keanu steepled his fingers and leaned forward. "Let me make it clear. You lost your job for doing the right thing," he said, his voice firm. "That shouldn't happen to anyone." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "Sadly, it happens all the time. There are workers, single parents, students, people who face injustice every day. They get fired, mistreated, or silenced because they don't have power." Keanu's eyes locked onto Lila's, his gaze steady. "What if we could change that?" he asked. Lila felt her stomach twist. "How?" she whispered. Keanu gestured around the table. "Everyone here is part of something bigger. We have resources, connections, and the ability to make things right." He leaned in a little closer. "I want you to be a part of that." Lila glanced around the table at the people sitting there. Some of them were nodding in agreement, others were looking at her, waiting to see what she would say. Her heart pounded in her chest. Could she really do this? Could she really go from a waitress to being a part of something so much bigger than herself? Keanu's voice softened, sensing her hesitation. "You know what it's like to be on the other side. To be powerless. That's why you're the perfect person to help others who feel the same way." Lila's heart raced. This was bigger than her. She had always been pushed around, made to feel small and invisible. But now she had the chance to do something about it. She looked up at Keanu and nodded. "I want to help," she said, her voice steady. Keanu's smile widened. "Welcome to the team." The room filled with quiet murmurs as the meeting continued. Lila listened as they talked about helping people who had been wrongfully fired, exposing corrupt businesses, and funding legal help for people who couldn't afford it. It was bigger than anything Lila had ever imagined, and it felt like she was on the edge of something life-changing. But then, just as she was starting to believe in this new life, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw an unknown number. Her stomach tightened with unease. Hesitantly, she answered the call. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. A cold, angry voice came through the phone. "I don't know who you think you are, but you just made a very powerful enemy." Lila froze. Her grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The voice chuckled darkly. "Let's just say you should have stayed in your place." The line went dead. Lila slowly lowered the phone, her face pale. She looked at Keanu, her voice trembling. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Keanu's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing. "What happened?" Lila took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Someone doesn't want me helping you," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that was creeping up on her. The air in the room shifted. Lila realized that this was no longer just about her. This was a fight. Keanu leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. "Tell me exactly what they said." Lila replayed the voice in her mind and repeated, "They said I made a powerful enemy and that I should have stayed in my place." Keanu's jaw tightened. He exchanged a glance with the blonde woman from earlier, who immediately started typing something on her phone. "There are people who don't like what we do," Keanu said, his voice calm but serious. "They profit from keeping good people powerless. And now you're on their radar." Lila's heart pounded in her chest, but she wasn't going to back down. Keanu looked at her carefully. "You have a choice, Lila. You can walk away now and no one will blame you. But if you stay, things might get dangerous." Lila clenched her fists, feeling the old version of herself, the one who would have run away or stayed silent, disappear. She wasn't that person anymore. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice firm. Keanu smiled softly. "Good." The blonde woman's phone pinged and she looked at the screen. Her face darkened. "I found something," she said, looking up at Lila. "And you're not going to like it?" Lila's stomach twisted. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman showed them her phone and Lila's eyes widened. "No, that's not possible." The name on the screen was her former manager, the same man who had fired her. Keanu leaned back in his chair, a knowing look in his eyes. Looks like this fight just got personal. Lila's hands clenched into fists. Her former manager was behind this. The man who had fired her, humiliated her, and made her feel worthless. He was the one behind this phone call. Keanu looked at her calmly. This isn't just about firing you anymore. He's trying to scare you into silence. Lila took a deep breath, but this time her heart was strong. She wasn't going to let anyone control her anymore. What do we do? She asked, her eyes meeting Keanu's. The blonde woman smirked. Oh, I have a few ideas. Keanu chuckled. I think it's time we show him that his power doesn't mean anything when the truth is on our side. The next morning, Lila woke up to a flood of notifications on her phone. Her story was everywhere. Headlines flashed across social media. Waitress fired for helping Keanu Reeves, corrupt manager exposed, hero waitress fights back. Lila sat up in bed, scrolling through the comments. Thousands of people were sharing their own stories of injustice, thanking her for speaking up. She wiped a tear from her cheek. This wasn't just about her anymore. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Keanu. Check the news. Your old boss got what he deserved. Lila's heart raced as she turned to the news. Her former manager had been fired. The restaurant was facing so much backlash that they had no choice but to let him go. Lila laughed out loud, feeling a sense of justice flood through her. Her phone rang again. It was Keanu. She picked up the phone and he said warmly, "How does it feel to change the world?" Lila smiled, staring out at the sun rising. It feels like just the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories filled with adventure, mystery, and excitement. Your support means the world and it helps keep these stories coming. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.